Okay, recording has started. Tonight I'm joined by Matt, Aph, and Gray. Um, Matt's got a pitch he's going to make, and then the four of us are going to kind of dive into some stormy waters. Before that, I need to align the planets. All right, Matt, pitch away.
Okay. Um, so the big thing that I wanted to talk about tonight is I've been really struck by, for those of you guys that have been paying attention to the news or on any kind of social media, there have been some violent videos that have been pretty much everywhere. And I don't want to talk specifically about the political issues that those things are symbols of, but more kind of like the phenomenon of violent videos being thrown at us in our social media and how we should think about them, how we should respond to them. I kind of want to do some sort of like moral deliberation about like what's our responsibility towards these things. How can we talk about like cultivating wisdom and dealing with these things? Because like these things don't appear to us in a vacuum. Like oftentimes these are videos that are very slanted from one position or another, and they are videos that are being sent to you in order to emotively grab you and kind of like it's hard for me not see them all as like framed in a particular way as to kind of like force you to respond in one specific direction. And if you don't submit to the emotional and moral framing of the video, you are a bad person. And so the question is like, what are some of the best practices for how we should respond to things like videos that are objectively like somewhat politically important? And I say somewhat because these are things that are happening nowhere near my communities. Like these are things that are on the other side of the country. And so like when they come my way, these videos seem to be like poised to force me to immediately, emotionally, morally come down one way or the other on a specific political issue that's happening very far away from me that I have no direct connection to. And so I'm kind of struggling with like what's the morality, the morals, the obligations around processing, dealing with violent video, and as well as like how do we handle the idea of abstract, like dealing with abstract politics. So things that are very specific and very like pertain deeply to the lives of people in one specific area of the country, but I have no meaningful way of engaging with them. And so from my perspective, it seems like there's very little point in getting emotionally dragged into that whirlpool just because that tears me away from whatever like local obligations I may have.
Yep. Yeah, no, there's a bunch of stuff that I have bouncing around in my head with this. I think the two things that are the most important are one, that you have to recognize that pretty much everything that's coming across your feed is propaganda, and therefore you should treat it as propaganda, and specifically that there are going to be a lot of people who are deliberately trying to lie by omission. And so there's going to be context that gets removed out of different situations. And so jumping to an emotional reaction at the first thing that you see is very rarely a good idea. There might be like the surrounding context might warrant that emotional reaction, but especially if you're not in a position where you need to have an immediate reaction, I think it's generally a better idea to take a step back, wait and see what additional stuff comes out, and then form a judgment, form an opinion on it. And then the other thing with it is that a lot of it is designed to emotionally exhaust you. Like the purpose of propaganda is not just to convince the stupid masses to believe false things. It's to exhaust the people who are trying to discern what is actually true through the propaganda, so that they no longer try to discern what is true through that propaganda. And so you have to recognize that that is also a game that is being played, and you can't let yourself get sucked into that. You have to take a step back. You have to let more information come out and still be willing and able to form those judgments. And then also recognize that like the degree to which you should be paying attention to this stuff isn't so much that you should be like, oh, I'm super focused on this all the time, because then, like Matt said, you're neglecting your other duties in your life that really should be your focus. What I have tried to, and mostly failed because I can't help but get sucked into a lot of this stuff, what I've tried to do is use it as like an early warning tsunami system, where if the tsunami's coming, you need to get up onto the hill so you don't get wiped out by it. But beyond that, you don't need to pay attention to every single wave that washes on shore. So.
Yeah, that's good. I kind of like want to think about what Aph just said but yeah, it's really complex. I mean, for not to dive into any of the specific situations, but I think it's like pertinent to the abstract conversation of like, what happened in Minnesota, or specifically the second video, of the male. I can't remember the guy's name. Which that
Alex Preddy.
Alex Preddy, yes. Like that video, I think is a great example of, that incident is a great example of what Aph's saying, in the sense of there's a ton of different camera angles, there's a ton of different videos that are coming out at various times, and just like new information is flooding in at such a rate that it's like I don't know. I just found, when I kind of accidentally stumbled on it, as you do on X or whatever. And then the phenomenology, this is crazy. Like I stumbled on it and I kind of made what I would now view as a mistake of like asking my wife if she was seeing it, because I saw she was on her phone. And then it started a conversation with us. She's from Minnesota. And we have family up there, not like right in Minneapolis, but pretty close. And it just like started a conversation that, without going into the details, ended up being like an unnecessarily like fraught conversation between my wife and I, that if I look back on it, ultimately came down to like, I didn't need to see that video and make a judgment, and neither did she, like at the rate at which we did, without like pausing and maybe not recognizing what happened, but saying, okay, we're not going to have like a conversation about this. We're not even going to try to break this down to any level of like detail or form like judgments on it, especially because of the fact that we're in Texas and we know that her family there is like safe and okay. Kind of like I was saying, like it was just a crazy mistake to even engage in a conversation that quickly. And so like, my opinion, I guess, has changed, I think, specifically because of that incident a few weeks ago between my wife and I, to be just, I don't know, almost like it's a new patch in my cogsec, like my cognitive security. I'm just like, what am I allowing into my awareness, and how is it affecting my like moment to moment, not even like neglecting my responsibilities, although you might frame it that way in terms of neglecting my responsibilities to keep a peaceful environment in my home. Like this was on the Sabbath, actually, I think, which is even crazier, that we had this conversation. Or maybe it was like on Saturday as we led up to like starting our Sabbath, and just brought us into like a not a great spiritual place, like in our marriage in that moment. And it was fine like a few hours later, but you just look back and you're like, man, why did we let that sort of virus in when there was no like direct responsibility on our part, or like actionable really anything with regards to the actual event that happened, whatever, 1,000 miles away, once we confirmed her family was, obviously not part of it. Okay. So that's not as much abstract, it's more specific, but I think it's very pertinent for us because we have family in Minnesota, but it was like a really solid reminder for me. And since I think it's led me to like reflect on, other members of my family and friends and things who maybe are even more susceptible to being sort of hoodwinked or bamboozled to a certain level than I am. And that's not to say that I am particularly incapable, because like I said, like I fall for this stuff just like you do, Aph, all the time. And I get sucked into it without knowing exactly or anywhere near exactly what happened. And it's just made me reflect on like, man, there's so many people that are going to get hit by that tsunami. So anyways, that's just first thoughts.
Oh goodness. Yeah, a friend of mine in Minnesota sent me like a New York Times article that it would have been like a month and a week or a month and 2 weeks ago, and he was like, "You should be thinking about like Minnesota and what's happening here." So I started thinking about it, and then I thought about it for a month, and I posted an 11,000 word Substack about Minnesota and civilization and kind of like what we're talking about now. I do think it is like the question of the age in some sense of like, I know like Matt, you were like, let's not dive into the specifics, but we're already in the specifics. Like I don't know if it's possible to stay at the general level. But like what happened in Minnesota is like with violent videos, that's not in isolation. Like I think about COVID, and I was being sent videos from the left and the right, different friend groups, and I was like, I don't know what to do with this. Like I don't know how I even discern what is real and what is not real. I think about Epstein and all of that is like seems to be building and merging with the UAP phenomenon stuff, and I'm like, okay. And then we have artificial intelligence, which is like in this conversation in the sense that it just makes it harder to discern things because now I can't trust a photograph in the way I could 6 months ago, 4 months ago. I can't trust a video in the way I could. I mean, I can't really even trust like the written word in the way I could. So then what's left for me to trust? Yeah, I feel like just the tsunami is here, and I feel like I'm running up. Go ahead.
We're not at a tsunami. This is not like I understand that to a degree. This feels like a tsunami, but what I'm talking about with the tsunami is I'm talking about like, oh, there's about to be something that knocks out the power grid. Oh, there's about to be something that like poisons a bunch of water sources for people around the country. I'm talking about things that are like existential level things that are going to so severely disrupt your everyday life that you're not going to be able to like if you were to just ignore what's going on in Minneapolis, you could live as though you were like nothing had changed. What I'm talking about with tsunamis is, oh, there's something that's going to hit you that will prevent you, like even if you ignored it, you can't ignore it. It's something that is going to wash up on your doorstep and knock out everything. That's the level of stuff that I'm like that's like early warning for tsunamis. That's what I'm talking about is like, okay, what's going on in foreign countries that could potentially cause war to actually break out? What's going on with like power grid issues in like Texas has a major winter storm that knocks out power, and then these particular failures happen as a consequence of that. Like that's the level that I'm talking about when I'm saying tsunamis, and that's like what I'm saying is like tsunami warnings is like paying attention to the things that are indicating that those things are about to hit you.
Sorry, Ethan.
Well, I was just going to say, so you're talking about like the Jordan Hall meta crisis, one domino topples, and then there's a whole chain reaction.
I guess the question I have is like, because your point, Aph, is like basically with regards to the videos is like, okay, the best MO for like, just to use the same term I used, the best MO for reliable cognitive security and not getting taken to become like a sort of a sheep or farm for this kind of propaganda is to pay attention only to the level that you need to be able to recognize a potential tsunami coming. And I guess my question, or what it made me think is like, in the event that two-pronged question. One being, is the information environment actually already too fraught to even be able to accurately, almost no matter who you are, like reliably know whether a tsunami is coming until it's basically at the doorstep and there's nothing more you can really do. And then the second side of that would be like, is there an argument to be had for just saying like, in the event that the tsunami is coming and you got wind of it to some degree ahead of time, would your ability to be able to find higher ground not really already just be a direct result of how much of your precious time you use to actually prepare a higher ground in your local context, and how much did you give away to actually being to maybe like the false sense of, oh, I'm going to be able to see a tsunami coming because I have the capability of doing that in this fraught information environment. And in reality, it's like when the tsunami comes, you're like, oh man, well, maybe I became aware a little bit faster than the guy down the street, but I still wasted time that I should have been using to prepare higher ground, metaphorical higher ground, in my local context.
Well, and I think that especially if you're operating from a Christian perspective, it's not so much that you're trying to find higher ground, it's that you're trying to become the higher ground that other people can come to. Like that's kind of how I'm trying to frame it for myself and trying to think about it. Cause like, and maybe it's foolish to think about things in those kinds of like existential level threats levels, but like, that's where I'm at. And that's the kinds of things like, I don't have infinite money. I don't have infinite time, but like, how can I prepare my suburban home in such a way that if something really bad were to happen, that I could be a point of a solid base point for my neighbors. And then to answer your first question, there's two kinds of people: those who can infer things from incomplete information.
Yep.
Nobody
And
laughed.
Nobody. Those who cannot.
Thank you.
That's because it's scaring us.
So it's not so much about like what, like, can you like, the thing that I think a lot of people are expecting is to get direct things from the information space, and that's no longer something that you can generally expect. There are certain sources that are going to be really good at picking up on particular pieces of information, but the main thing that you have to start looking at is what exists outside of a particular video frame, because you have like this narrow field of view whenever you're being shown a particular picture. So what's happening outside of that, and then also what's happening outside of that temporally, what happened leading, like in those frames leading up to the frames that you're being shown, and what happens after those frames. And those are, I think, the things that a lot of people are missing or not thinking about, is like you're looking at this thing in isolation, pulled out of the context of the broader scope of what it's within and the broader time scope that it's within.
Matt, have we hijacked your question?
I mean, it's going places. This is exciting.
I have
Yeah, Matt, what do you think?
Okay. Oh no, I was just gonna jump on what Aph was talking about, the idea of like becoming higher ground. And one of the problems is like back to the initial thing we we're discussing about, is like how like the thing that's gonna make the tsunami even worse right now is the fact that we are in a trust crisis. We are in a crisis where like we don't have things that we can rely upon to tell us the truth. We don't have things that we can rely on to give us an accurate picture of the world. And so part of that becoming high ground now, whatever that means, is it's a weird thing to say. Like, you got to figure out some way to become trustworthy, because I kind of feel like being trustworthy is almost like one of those things you can't really aim at directly. The people that aim at becoming trustworthy directly are probably manipulative people, which is why I always got like very, very kind of like skeeved out a little bit. The one time like Scott Adams did a pivot to like, I'm going to become the most credible man in the world. And I'm like, I don't notice he didn't say honest. He didn't say truthful. He just said the man who is most believable out of everybody in the world. But the question of like, how do you become the kind of person that other people can rely on?
We're not even that far into the stream, and we've already just came to the answer that we need to become saints. All right, everybody, have a great night.
I mean,
let your yes be yes and your no be no.
It's the process that's the problem, bro.
Yeah.
just checkmate your opponent, Matt. I don't see what the problem is. Why are you making this more complicated than it needs to be?
Yeah, I was, something that comes to mind. I've been thinking about. Matt knows this, but the past couple of days, I've been thinking about Dune, and in this conversation, the scene that pops in my head is when Paul is being tested by what's her name, the Reverend Mother, the Gom Jabbar. That's what it's called, right? The Gom Jabbar.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's like if there's a meme there of like the Gom Jabbar is the media environment, and like, can you keep your hand in, or like if you can't survive the Gom Jabbar, can you actually survive the media environment? Can you be trusted? And it's like, I guess what I'm poking at there is like there's something about like an embodied skill of like presence, peace. I don't know. The other thing that's like sort of rattling around is like how relevant the discipline of fasting is like to this whole conversation too. I guess if we're going to talk about like sanctification, which we just brought in, and just like cultivating the sense of mind and spirit and presence to be able to like discern, you see a video or you get a certain piece of information, whatever it may be, an event happens, and you not only need to have like, potentially a certain amount of sort of understanding or intelligence or information to be able to make sense of it, but you also have to have like the presence of spirit and mind, clearness that comes from, I'm just connecting it to fasting, that like fasting is one way in which you cultivate the kind of mind and spirit that is capable of potentially discerning what the proper action is, even if you can't discern what the heck's actually going on. I don't know if that lights anything for you guys.
I think it's really funny that we turn this into a Lent discussion without meaning to.
It's on everybody's mind.
Or
Also, I just wanted to point out, I
mean
have my own personal Gom Jabbar just over there. I've been using.
Oh my
lately.
gosh, that's amazing.
This is it's a hand massager because my hands have been acting up lately. But you said that, I'm like, wait, I have one of those. You shove your hand in there, and it makes you feel all kinds of horrible feelings for 15 minutes.
Well, I think that the media acts kind of like a reverse Gom Jabbar, which you kind of pointed out with the fasting. Is it's not that you have to hold your hand in and then somebody else will release you. You have to you put your hand in and then you take your hand out before it pulls the whole you in with with your hand.
Totally.
Like
I should have said it better. Of like, if you can't be trusted to keep your hand in the Gom Jabbar, then you definitely can't be trusted to put your hand in the cookie jar of the modern media environment.
Well, that's what I'm saying though. Is like it's a little bit different because it's like you have to know when to take your hand back out again. Sure. Yeah. But with cookie jar is another perfect example of that. Like, don't keep eating the cookies. Don't do it.
Mm-hmm.
So like you're saying
the practice of like putting your hand over like an open flame to see like how much pain can almost. Sometimes the wisest thing to do is to just not play the game at all, which is just something that I just want to like reiterate over and over again. You do not need to play every game that is presented to you. You shouldn't play most games that are presented to you.
But I want to, man.
Most of them aren't even that fun, and you know it.
Yeah, that's true.
If I can't enter a chat room and speak with kindness to digital gnosis or secular Quranism, then I shouldn't be in the chat room.
Can I just not say anything at all? Is that an option?
That's what my grandfather. I mean, I never got to meet him. He was dead the year I was born, but like, that was one of his sayings. Like, if you have nothing nice to say nothing at all. And we lost that. Like, our old folks died, and that little meme disappeared.
I mean, oh gosh, this is a whole nother tangent that we really don't need to go into. But the specifically like how to properly handle trolls and the sort of like Brandolini cascade problems that you get with that. But that's a whole nother topic.
Put a pin in it.
I'll just since the topic is brought up, I just want to say our dear compatriot President Foxman has written a tremendous reflection on what to do with, as he describes it, olives. Everyone should read it We're trying to make it I'm doing my hard to like introduce the category of olives into discussions and make it a meme, just because it's so important to recognize that, especially if there's things you don't want to deal with, you can become like the society of people that hate olives so much that everyone needs to know about it. Or you can realize your waiter accidentally dropped an olive into your salad. You can brush it off your plate and move on. So olives away.
That.
Back to whatever nonsense we were talking about.
Olives away.
In the as I was writing this really large Substack piece, I got to about the middle and I started writing the ending, and I couldn't figure out what to say in the middle, or I couldn't figure out how to get to the end. And I was thinking about sainthood, sanctification. And I went to my mother and I said, Mom, I'm stuck in this piece. I need to ask you a question. Can you give me your gut reaction? And I said, is it arrogant of me if I say I want to be a saint, that I want to be holy? And she immediately went, no, not at all. But I have trouble saying that. And I'm not saying my mother is right about that, but I don't know. What do you guys think? What does it mean to say I want to be a saint? Is that appropriate? Is that allowed?
It's an aspiration.
Yeah. So the joke in kind of low church Baptist circles is the one thing you never pray for is patience, because as soon as you pray for patience, you're going to get all sorts of opportunities to learn patience. And so that's one of those things that you again, there's some things you want to seek indirectly, but I think spiritual ambition is something that we culturally have been sorely lacking for a very long time.
Yeah, I don't think it's I see what you're saying with the arrogance thing. And I don't know, I came from, the first 22 years of my life, I was extraordinarily secular. And I think there was something in me that would laugh at people who were, cynically laugh at people who were trying to be especially if you said that, trying to be a saint or just trying to be an overly good person. You'd be it was almost just a cynical, meaning crisis. The world that's not the world we live in, dude. But then, so I kind of get a little bit of the, it almost feels arrogant for someone to say that. And then even as a Christian, I understand that. But inside the church, I think we sorely need people who are earnestly, Dallas Willard, I'm in my formation, Dallas Willard is one of my, to use the Vanderklay term, he's the Speaker of the House of my Consciousness Congress. And I think it's in his book, The Renovation of the Heart, but it could be in one of those other big tomes you wrote. But he talks about if you genuinely seek to follow Christ, you have to have vision, intention, and means. And so he's throughout church history, we have the means are here. He goes through whatever book it is, he's talking about, here's the means, the spiritual disciplines, things like that. Vision, we have plenty of vision. What we really lack sorely is the genuine intention to follow Christ on the cross and to become saints. Have you actually said, even said to God, this is what I intend to do. I want to become a saint. And I think the answer for most people is no, and you sort of have to recommit to that intention, every day, every minute, every hour, whatever. But all that to say, I don't think it's too arrogant. It's an aspiration, but I think it's one that if you're not genuinely aspiring to become a saint, then I'm not sure there's a disconnect there, I would say.
I think there's also a lot of folks who were sinners for so long that they can't see anything for themselves other than just trying to be redeemed. They don't even see sainthood as on the table. And so it's one of those, there's a big mindset transition that is made when you shift from, I'm just trying to redeem myself from being a sinner, to I'm aspiring to be a saint. And like those are actually like two sides of the same coin, but one's running away from the negative, one's running towards the positive. And
Sure.
running towards the positive is way more effective than running away from a negative.
Mm. Yeah, that's a really great way to frame that.
Yeah. I mean, whatever you use to set your orientation is going to, that's the thing that's going to determine your, like what you end up as. Like if you're heading towards something positive versus running away from something negative, what you use to like establish your direction, that's going to define you. Mm-hmm. And so do you want to be defined by what you're trying to avoid, which was it that Dallas Wood spoke about this. Like part of our problem is we've inherited the system of Christianity as what, sin management or something like that.
That's what he said. Sin management. Yeah.
Yeah. Versus like, again, like actively seeking towards the good.
If you're riding your bicycle and you look at the tree, dunk.
Yeah, and it's also funny too, like Aph, the point you just made of like they are actually the same thing. It's like, you know, I just was re-listening to Jordan Hall and Ross's conversation, and they're talking about like the participatory ontology and how, you know, whatever, you know, Jordan's giving all the receipts and stuff and talking about how this is as far back as Augustine, and they're talking about, you know, Barfield says it's as far back as the writings of the New Testament or whatever, but this point at which like we cannot help but think in dichotomies, like we just can't, like we can't help but split it, of being like, you know, oh, I see, you know, me running towards the positive and like away from the negative, of like me being redeemed is me being sanctified. Like those are one and the same thing. Like the process of redemption is the process of sanctification, but it's like, and I'm not saying it's not useful to be able to view them in both of those lights. Like I'm not saying collapse it all into one concept, but like to be able to hold those two things in your head at the same time and recognize that there are different ways of viewing like the same thing or describing the same thing.
Yep.
Like if you pursue one of them, you're making progress with both objects of orientation, which is one of the nice things. Where like even if like you're an Aph's program, which is like I'm just trying to make up for, redeem my life spent elsewhere. And it's like you are like if you're sincerely pursuing that, you are making progress towards sainthood. But there's going to come a point like those are kind of like two modes you got to switch back and forth between. Like sometimes you got to play offense, sometimes you got to play defense.
Well, especially when you start going towards Scylla and Charybdis, or Scylla or Charybdis, like you start going towards a particularly negative hole that's trying to pull you in. Sometimes it's better to just say, I'm away from that.
Dare we say virtue? You're trying to split the middle between two vices?
Yeah,
something like that.
Well, and to like pull it back to your to the original pitch, Matt, like, and gosh, yeah, I do this to myself. Like I the accusation that I glaze Jordan Hall is like fair. Like I don't, whatever. I'll take that on the chin. It's fine. Like I'll just take it on the chin. I know I'm gonna get it, and I know who I'm gonna get it from.
You just haven't figured out the names that I glaze yet, man. That's it. I know to keep those to myself.
Sorry. Oh man, if I laugh too loud, I'm gonna wake up a baby. But to bring it back to the original pitch, like one of the interesting things I think Jordan has said is like in this, when he talks about the whole idea of the digital retrieves the medieval, like, is there a point at which you're like the only people who can be trusted? I think Jordan said in this sort of like future that he imagines is like the only people who will actually be trusted on like something like the open internet would be almost like monks, you know, like you would have this sort of like these communities where it's not that the internet doesn't exist, but it's like the discernment around who actually can like dip their hand into that and proceed with proper discernment is like something like a saint or a monk or whatever. And I think that's a really interesting like question, is like, do you need to be, and how do you recognize that you, or not you, but maybe it's like other people recognizing you or you recognizing others as like, oh, that's somebody that we can like trust to, you know, like wade into these waters and act as a filter.
Do you need to be able to trust one person with everything? Do you need to have one monk who is capable of delivering the truth on all matters? Or is it better to cultivate a wide array of people who they are experts on particular things, and you know that if they're talking outside of the particular zone of expertise, you should probably be a little careful with whether they're actually able to discern something properly or not. But they might have something interesting to say. Don't want to dismiss it at hand, but that rather than trying to find one person or maybe like a couple of people to put all of your trust in. Put limited zones of trust in a bunch of different people with different domains.
Aph, are you pitching the distributed trust of Bitcoin monasteries?
I mean,
That wasn't
that's
my
I
intention.
know what
But we
maybe
can go there.
2 of those words
I'm-
mean.
I'm laughing because that's like I just can't talk anymore because I'm gonna get accused of glazing. So I just can't.
I mean, you could just be an arrogant prick like me and glaze yourself.
Oh,
Don't do
man,
that
but
on stream, Ethan. It's not appropriate for the audience.
I'll just whatever. I'm just gonna keep going. The answer I'm thinking of, Aph, when you say that is you're absolutely right, but also in this day and age, we need to be able to have a reliable way of knowing who is who. So I mean, yes, like if we're talking about an embodied situation, then it's like yes. I mean, like if I have those people in my community, in my communal network, then yes, of course, it's like an abundance of what's the proverb, Matt? I'm sure you know the proverb by heart, like an abundance of counselors. There's wisdom in an abundance of counselors, or something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah, something like that for people who know the Bible and stuff. But in the digital age, like increasingly, how do you know? Like a blue check mark doesn't mean anything to anybody anymore, and increasingly less and less. And so it's like, I think so and so is saying something, but do I know it's actually them? And it goes into, and I think this would be something that like TLC would benefit from, like hearing Jordan and others talk about more and be like pressed on is like, what does it look like for, some form of proof of who is who on, who is human and who they actually say they are, and how important that technology is.
I
think
actually don't think that's as important. I think that I'll come back around to the point. How do liars lie?
With a little bit of truth.
That's a big part of it. Like there's a lot of depth and complexity to that very simple question, and that's more what I think should be like. If there was an AI, a rogue AI that got a hold of a Twitter account and was reliably posting truthful information, then you can reliably say like, oh, okay, I can put a pin on this and believe that it's true with 95% confidence. But what you have to be mindful of and what you have to be watching out for is one, like identifying people who are notorious for lying or notorious for falling for misinformation. Like I think I'll glaze Jordan Hall too. Why not? The whole idea of pruning information networks, of like if somebody has a certain response to, and kind of going back to the original topic too, if somebody has a certain response to like an initial reaction to a video that gets published, then you can kind of see how they are processing information. And then that allows you to infer how they're processing other pieces of information as well. And so it's not just about liars lying. It's also about just the general information landscape of how are people processing information. And based off of that, who can you reliably go to for information that you can trust? And again, like I think it's specific instances, not just like broad spectrum.
Yeah, that's another one of the unintentional services Facebook provides. It tells you all the people that you cannot talk about politics with. But on Gray's topic of, I guess, our digital desert monastics that go live on the top of the mountain and are just try to live as like as completely untouched. I do think that, to get back to like a broader kind of like field of counselors, because I think we're trying to get at like more the question of how do we hold tryouts for people that are actually in our kind of like, in our circle of counselors who can actually provide. That's one thing, but here's the thing: people can lie on the internet all the time.
People can lie to your face.
Here's
one. I know.
One of the ways that you can tell. Sorry.
I was going to say, like, there's also like an important space for folks that spend plenty of amount of time on the internet, to the point where they're kind of like seasoned denizens of the internet and have developed a certain sort of like canniness, a certain sort of like wisdom about how to navigate this specific environment.
Totally.
One of the things that Ethan and I were talking about the other day is just how there's this weird kind of phenomenon when you got like, say, like digital natives, where you've got people that, as far as the internet is concerned, they are much older. They have more experience with the internet than folks that are physically much older, but have jumped onto, Facebook to keep up with their grandkids or whatnot. And so you have this weird kind of disparity of wisdom where actually in a space like that, those with more experience can, and which you hopefully translates to those that have a lot more wisdom, are those that are much younger looking in this specific domain.
That's a really good point.
They have unique things to say in regards to how to handle this space.
Also, just to jump back for a second, one of the ways that you can tell if somebody actually knows what they're talking about, they're not just BSing, is whether they actually know the shibboleths that would accompany their normal, like everyday actions with whatever it is. Like, how do they refer to certain things? What words are they using to refer to certain things? And there's like, especially somebody else who has been in that world, and like just Army as an example, because I served in the Army, like you can tell pretty quickly whether somebody is BSing about that, because there's certain things, certain words that you just don't know if you weren't in it.
So this might take us in a different direction, which feel free to not. But I guess my question is like, what about people who are in your embodied environment? Like, your family is obviously, I'm thinking of some family members, but like, without giving any like too much detail, but like you could say the same for friends or like just close community members, like in your embodied community that you recognize very quickly, you cannot trust their ability to discern, and yet you are inextricably linked in relationship with them, and you must love them as Christ loves us, and being able to navigate that in this environment. Like, and it doesn't matter. We have multiple family members, that their perspective, on the Minnesota stuff, for instance, is very, very just specifically like CNN coded, like whatever they're told, without, you guys know exactly what I mean. And, and recently there was a moment when one of them said something where I realized like the degree to which they thought any other perspective was absolutely ludicrous. And I was like, wow, like I really have to, like, it almost like changed my priors of like, I can't trust what that person thinks about anything in this domain, but also like you have to navigate relationship and want to, and that's like a particularly fraught challenge.
Can I try to tie up a hobo pack real quick that we can sling over
Bindle
our
stuff
shoulders?
this sucker, man.
Okay, so we're talking about technology. We're talking about tsunami warning systems. There's some sense where we're talking about the Good Samaritan. What does it mean to help those that you pass by on the street? We're talking about how do we become saints? What is the path of sainthood? How do we, like President Foxman told me in a recent conversation, how do we be like Joan of Arc, whose life was like lightning shot straight? How do we set our faces like flint towards our city, like Jesus? Gray mentioned Dallas Willard. That made me think about, there's a guy named John Ortberg who was a student of Willard. And I listened to this talk one time, and Ortberg was trying to like sum up Dallas Willard's work. And the way he described it was, there are the things, let's see if I get this right. There are the things you say you believe. There are the things you think about what you say you believe. And then there are your actions, which reveal your true beliefs. And one of the tasks for humans is to align speech with thought with actions. And if you get those three things in alignment, I think there's something trustworthy there, because what you say is what you think and what you do. And then, like, for the Good Samaritan, like, what does it mean to, like, if I have a bad day, I'm not going to stop and like say hello to the grocery store clerk. So like, what are like the really practical things that we need to like live out in the here and now to like ensure that we become the kind of people that can, one, get ourselves, well, not get ourselves because it's not us doing it. This only happens by the Spirit of God, but like get alignment in ourselves by the Spirit, with the Spirit. And then like we clean our room, you clean your house, you clean the yard, you clean the street. And that like is these growing circles of, I don't know, as much as you can handle.
Do I have to do it in that order? It's way easier to clear the street than it is to clean my house.
Yeah, I want to argue about Trump, but I want to do absolutely nothing about the city council meeting. I agree.
I think there's something to be said for you don't necessarily need to start, like, you can kind of start at different spots along the thing as long as you're seeking alignment. At the very least, like when you talk about like the first three sections that you mentioned, the difference between like your head, your what you say, what you think, and what you do. You can't get very far if you're not working on aligning those three. And I think the first big proxy for him to talk about becoming a saint or becoming trustworthy is, do your actions match your words? I don't have access to your thoughts. But if you're doing what you say you're trying to do pretty consistently, that is a pretty good proxy that helps me to believe that like what you're actually thinking in your head is close to what you're saying and doing.
Yeah, I also feel on like just bouncing off that, like there's one, trusting that God is guiding this process, right? And like that there are certain like affordances that come with like just whatever's happening in your life. Like just like looking around at like what is going on in my life and saying like to what degree are the events and circumstances of my life affording growth in this particular area. Like maybe it is cleaning up your room, that kind of thing. Like there's a certain like I guess I'm thinking of this almost in like seasons of life of like when I was a single guy, there were certain affordances about that stage of life that were like lent itself directly to building discipline in a certain way of like I controlled my time, and there was a big challenge to that because like you can do whatever you want, but then that's also a big challenge to say like I'm gonna use this time wisely, and then there's a completely different affordance that shifts to being in a seasonal life now where I don't really have much say over my time at all between work and family and stuff, but there's like a huge affordance to like I can identify more now with the cross than I ever could before because I just have like a direct affordance of like, laying myself down for my child and my wife in certain ways now. And it's not to say that this season, I mean, I think there's something special about this season in particular, but I guess my point is just like, it might be, I have friends that aren't going through illness, and that provides particular affordances for you to grow in a certain way. But so it's like you can name any particular, it's not just suffering. It's also like, what is your work situation? What does your job afford you to do? What is, like how you handle conversations about Minnesota at your job? Like, what affordance does that provide for you to be able to align your actions, words, thoughts, and just trusting that like God is inviting you into the different areas in your life, and the affordances they bring for a specific, like whatever sanctification is available to you in that moment.
I think it was kind of an implicit question there, but when is it worth it to confront those close to us about difficult things? Like that's one thing that I've like I had a really difficult conversation at our latest Olympia estuary with Nate about the Minnesota stuff, and like that to me is the one of the best places to. Like, I don't really want it to be a confrontation, but if that's what it has to turn into, then like that's where where the people know each other, they know or have some reasonable degree of confidence that they both want the best for all parties involved, and that there's some issue in perception that's what needs to be clarified. But when you start going up with family members who are CNN coded, who don't believe that there's any other rational perspective besides the one that they have, when is it better to love them as they are? When is it better to love them as an enemy? When is it better to try and confront them with the things that you know that are outside of their scope of understanding? Because there's a real risk of them just rejecting that outright, of them just going deeper into whatever hypnotic trance that they're in already. And I don't want to say that as like a disparaging thing. Like that's just like, and it's not a left thing. That's a all people thing. It's like, I see a lot of what I can only describe as people being drawn deep and deeper into hypnotic trance of believing this particular thing.
It's a great question.
Yeah. The thing that frustrates me, the question of like, how do you know when to push with your family, is it's so like, it's so far from an abstract question. It's all contextual. It's all concrete. It's all that specific relationship. And so like, that's the sort of thing where you just can't give anybody else any actual advice other than just to say that like, look, like you, like there's some times where you just got to have like sometimes like have conversations where you establish like at what level are we going to relate to one another. Like and my kind of attack is and my kind of attack is like to always signal like if you want to kick this thing up to another notch of kind of like knowing each other deeper, then I am game for that, and trying to like just basically I just try and like signal both like openness and acceptance, and we'll have the kind of conversation that will lead to greater understanding. I like that's with every fiber of my being. I try and do that. The tricky thing with family is there's sometimes that for families to function, there's sort of like a minimum level of intimacy that you need to be at, and sometimes you aren't at that. So even if you don't want to have the confrontation, it has to happen anyway.
I was gonna say like you can also think of the like any particular relationship through this same like Ethan was, like clean your room, clean your house, clean the street. You can think of that. I'm gonna say fractal. Oh, there's the word, but like you can think of your relationship with a particular family member in that sense of like if I have a certain family member that I might disagree with on this like super high level, abstracted or whatever. But it's like, that is the proverbial like city. And like, we're not at that level in our relationship. Like we need to clean up our relational room first. Like me with my mom, like me and my oldest brother, like our mom, like we just are like, we will just go at it about this stuff. But I'm like, the reason we cannot handle those things is because we have not cleaned our relational room. Like there are skeletons in the closet of our relational room, believe me. And like, we haven't cleaned those out. And so we have no business trying to operate at the level of a relational city. We just have no business, and to the degree to which we are willing to humble ourselves and say, just because we've been in a relationship since I was born 30 years ago does not mean like there's intimacy there. You're my mother, I'm your son, but we need to go way back, and we have to have a humility to do that. And admit that there are skeletons in the closet and clean them out before we can think about trying to have cohesion on this level. And obviously that's like an extreme example because that's my mother. Like she's known me my whole life, but you could like think of that with every different family. For me, like if it's a mother-in-law, it's like, hey, we've only known each other for 4 years. Like before we talk about politics, like let's like spend more than 2 days a year together at Christmas or whatever. Like we have a lot more relational equity to build before we, can handle these kind of things. And that's okay. Like we don't have to talk about those things because maybe we're just not at the proper place yet.
That's so good, dude. And unfortunately, it's so much harder to have those. Yeah. Like it's so much harder to have those clean out the closets of your skeletons than it is to, yell about things that are happening on the other side of the country.
Yeah, it's easy for me to say that I need to go clean out the skeletons with my mom, but
that's a scary closet to open. So, you know,
What would happen if you did?
probably only good things, because I believe that God would bless that. Which I say I believe that. Do I actually believe that? That's a hard thing to say. It's something I wrestle with, because like my mom that's a tough one, but like with my dad, for instance, it's less like we can talk about anything, my dad and I, for instance, but there's a lot of skeletons in the closet too, and that terrifies me just as much, of just being like, can we actually go back? Do we want to open that door and things like that? And even knowing that there's probably good things that would come of it, you're just like, man, that's it's sort of like just like the analogy holds. It's like doing it for yourself, of being like, do I really want to consider the degree to which my like day-to-day personal habits, like Jordan Peterson's whole original point, like, do you really want to like confront the fact of your day-to-day personal habits and how those are directly contributing to the suffering you're experiencing, you know?
So the question I would ask is, do you have to take all the skeletons out at once? Because some of those might be load-bearing skeletons in ways that you weren't expecting. So
Yeah.
it might be good to just take one skeleton out at a time and see what happens as you take each one out. Because I think that's what, like, a lot of people fall into the trap of like, oh, we need to clean the skeletons out of the closet. We need to get everything out all at once. It's like, no, you don't. You really don't. And it might be that like the skeletons are clasped hands and you pull one and a bunch more come with it, but you don't need to go in there with the intention to clean out the whole closet at once.
And it has to be mutual to an extent.
That's true too.
Like,
Yeah,
you
that's
can't.
very true.
If they don't want to go there, then the skeletons will pull you both in there. You know, it's like it has to be mutual. And you know, I'm going back to the beginning of a conversation. Your point, Aph, about the dichotomy of like chasing towards something positive versus running from something negative. And I've been reading The Ethics of Beauty, Timothy Petitsis, and in the beginning, you know, he's talking about this beauty first, like doing ethics by going beauty first instead of truth first. And that's like another way of kind of framing the same thing, which is like chasing after something positive versus like having the truth rammed down your. And he's talking about in the very beginning of the book, like how he's talking about trauma victims, specifically of war, and how the truth first approach doesn't really reliably work in healing trauma from war. And he's making this argument that the beauty first approach, like actually having something positive, like the shining of beauty, is actually like the proper approach to healing. And that, I don't know, that concept just kind of has something to do with what we're talking about here, of like, do you want to go and like unearth the skeletons, or do you want to like also try to point towards something beautiful and say, can we like, and I try to do that, like even with my mom, for instance, of like, you know, she now has a grandchild, her first grandchild from myself and my wife. And it's like, if we, for instance, last summer, we argued about feminism and just like, you know, the women in the workforce. And like, I got myself, I was stupid. But like part of the point that I tried to make to her overall was just like, let's just look at like the beauty of like my wife's relationship with her daughter. And like, let's start there. And like just talk about that, and then maybe we can talk about like more conceptual stuff on top of that. And like if we get all the way to politics, like maybe we can talk about that if we first like focus on like the beauty of the mother and the daughter, you know.
But I think a really important point in there was the fact that you recognized that it wasn't worth it to try and push that point at that moment. Like
totally.
That, like having that realization after the fact is really important, so you don't make the same mistake. But then cultivating it to the degree where you can see yourself about to make the mistake and then stop. Nope, not that, not right now.
That's the hard part.
Hold it back.
The problem is in situations like this where you're broaching up on like dealing with family skeletons, is your warning signals are biased towards a certain level of self-preservation. And so like, again, this is all like, for me, the moral disposition of myself, I know when I feel that I should be pushing more than I am. I take that, the warning signal as an excuse to disengage and I'm suffering from disengagement in some relationships because I'm like, I did not push when I should have pushed. And for family members or other situations where you only see them every couple of months, you get another like 4 months before you can even begin to broach that again.
But it's like the path, all of this is the path to, like, to go back to what Ethan was saying about trustworthiness. Like to have relationships like where you can genuinely trust the other person can actually trust you. It's like this is the stuff that you have to that you have to deal with, which is brutal. You know.
Oh. We Twitter out the idea. I think both. I think I floated this in Estuary down at Nate's Estuary, and trying to build on the concept with my family of almost like we need to establish sort of like there's points where we need to make our relationship almost like diplomatic to the point where like I would like to create a space where we can address a skeleton in our closets. Are you willing to prepare your soul in a couple of days' time to address that skeleton? Something like that. Sort of like get really weird, really formal. Like I thought about it almost being like, all right, we need to host like a formal meeting where like the real like, family business gets done. Not to use like a coarse word like business in the case of like intimate relationships, but like there's a point in time where we need to create a way to like create enough emotional distance that we can act like surgeons a little bit on ourselves.
Some sort of a ritual, perhaps.
Something like that.
Okay, so I have a hard out in 40 minutes because I have to go to the gym in the morning in order to follow the path I'm on. So I'm going to set this for 40 minutes. I know, Gray, your time is sort of in the air, so we'll see. Okay, so timer at 40 minutes.
Do you want to do 40 or 30? That way we can actually wrap up once it rings. Because if it's a hard out, then
okay, fine.
I mean, I'm just saying that like, is it really a hard out, or is it 40 and then a Midwest goodbye that lasts for another hour?
So it's 9:50, and I need to be in bed at 10:30 so I can make my morning time that I'm up every morning at 4 a.m. That has to happen. So anything past 10:30. I'm going to be a miserable human being tomorrow, and I won't be able to be friendly to grocery store clerks. And this is basically just my baseline. Okay, so I want to throw out a pitch based on these pitches. If you guys don't like this, say you don't like it, and then just ignore me.
You're the host. What are you talking about? You have host privileges.
I want to do a very quick history lesson on how the four of us got here, and then I want to talk about the hierarchy of the city, which is a soul. So I met Matt and Aph in Washington when my then fiance, now wife, were traveling around, and the three of us got like island tiki drinks in an Elks Lodge with like trapdoors and fake walls. I don't remember what it was. It was really weird. And we like stood in like a stairwell, and people kept like asking to like for us to move, and we just kept talking. And Matt like gave me this really thick book about Hebrew, and we were all kind of uncomfortable. But then we like kind of like told each other like our stories, and we all kind of cried. And then like the things we said that day, we don't really talk about that on the internet because it was just deeper, and it just kind of happened. And you two kind of knew each other or did know each other. I didn't know either of you at all. And then recently, this guy named Paul Vanderklay had this like Friday Estuary where Matt had this idea, and his idea didn't get chosen. And then Matt and I were texting, and then I said, Matt, hey, do you want this to just be the two of us? And Matt was like, well, I think Gray Hamilton's really fired up about this. So then Matt texted Gray, but then Gray was like, I might not be able to make it. So then I was like, Matt, is there anybody else? And then we were like, oh, duh, we got to get Aph back. So then we got Aph back, and then Gray was like, I can still be here. And so now it's the four of us, and this wasn't planned, but like if the four of us didn't come here tonight, like this wouldn't be what it is. And like this is really special and sacred to me. I'm really grateful for each of you, and like none of us planned this. When we talk about like the the pulling skeletons out of the room, like what else is there between us? Like if Matt and I share a relational room, do Matt and I share a relational house? Are we in a relational house right now, the four of us? What are the relational streets? Like is Plato's Republic actually about the soul? Is the soul a city?
We're
Luke
visiting
Thompson,
your host club.
Luke Thompson would love that pitch. I'm just gonna say,
Well, Luke Thompson is not here. He doesn't get to play.
I like that pitch. I like that pitch. No, I'm just running my Luke Thompson script about personalism, and that's why I just know that he would love that pitch. I don't know if you guys have anything, Matt or Aph. I'm thinking.
I mean, I do think, I guess the idea of like once you like become friends, you are like entering one another's relational networks. It's like you've kind of like moved into the psychic neighborhood in a sense. And so it's a question of like, then becomes the process of being neighborly towards one another and seeing what develops. And there's sometimes where people like make a point of like moving. So I'm not sure like we necessarily live in the same house. That seems a little bit too extreme. That feels like that should be reserved for like family, marriage, stuff like that. But it is, but like neighbors living on the same block, living in the same like, you know, county, stuff like that. There's a certain, you know, we've intentionally gone out of our way to maintain some sort of like relational closeness to one another. So yeah, I like the idea of psychic neighbors.
I'd say we're hired crew on Ethan's day trip on his ship.
And we're not very good at submitting to the captain.
I mean, the captain hasn't made too many demands of his deckhand, so I think that the monkeys running the circus is just an inevitable consequence of that.
Yeah, there's too many cooks in the kitchen because I was supposed to be off deck, and then Aph, and now there you go. Now we're all just in Ethan's kitchen. I think that's the psychic neighbors. That is what TLC seems to be to me, is a psychic neighborhood, and I do think it's good that there's always this tension of to go back to earlier in the conversation, a little bit of like, you don't want to be putting so much attention on, of course, like the crazy media environment that you're like neglecting responsibilities, sort of like at home, like physically at home. And I think TLC always has this tension in it of, you have people coming and going, but then also I have weeks where I'm like not paying attention at all, and then I like drop back into the neighborhood, but it's nice to know, like a year ago when I was a lurker, like I didn't have a house. Like I was just kind of like, I was just the guy who like strolled into town and, was like checking things out, window shopping, and like now I have a
creeping, peering in windows. Like, oh, what are they doing in there? Huh.
Crazy. The backdoor keyhole.
It goes me like, yes.
The creepier way to think about it is it not me doing that alone, but like hundreds of people peeking through your windows. But yeah, a year ago I didn't have a house, and now I have a house that even if I leave, like I can come and like there's a place, and there's a neighborhood, and I have neighbors that know me and things like that. And it's really interesting to think about though. Like as I've become like genuine friends with people in TLC, it's like just like what effects. I mean, I'm just kind of speaking to like the sublimity of like the pitch you just gave, Ethan, which is just this like sort of mystery of, as in this digital age, the possibility of something like this psychic neighborhood now exists, and how that like then influences the way that it's already influenced the way that I lead my family in like a very embodied way, like the friendships I have, the conversations that I'm able to have and do have. And like, it's just, it's crazy to think, and sublime, like I'm saying sublime because it's like something you can't really put words to, but it's I don't know what else to say really.
Well, let me throw one more metaphor onto the pile here. It's also kind of a dojo where you learn how to have those conversations in ways that you wouldn't like. You're not going to be able to watch CNN and figure out how to have a conversation with your partner or with your family about like what's going on in Minnesota. But if you watch TLC and you see two people having an ad about it, you might get some ideas about how to potentially deal with that in a more productive way than you would be able to otherwise.
Or better, you build relationships with people in TLC that you can then ask and be like there's a group, there are groups of guys that I'm like, I can, if I'm about to potentially engage in some skeleton spelunking, you know, like there's people that I can ask about for advice, and I feel good about the advice that I'm getting, you know.
That was really good, by the way. Skeleton spelunking is like top tier meme. Top tier.
We are definitely doing our part of creating new neologisms tonight. This is great work, boys.
So funny.
When we talk about skeletons in the closet, are we talking about forgiveness?
Yes.
Ideally.
Yeah, ideally.
Because sometimes you pull that skeleton out of the closet and it becomes a thrall and kills you.
Well, and until you open the closet door, it's also not clear exactly what shape the skeleton's in. Like you can't really, you know. And so, what you think might be like a little mouse skeleton is actually the closet's way bigger than you thought, and the skeleton's way bigger than you thought. You know, so.
Yeah, I think you know, with Matt's original pitch, I wonder if there's something to like when our mental energy, our spiritual energy, our physical energy, all of these things in unison, like when they are focused at a federal level, then like we don't have any energy to give to the skeletons in the closet. And like there is so much noise the higher you scale up that like you can't even like hear the creaking and the rattling and the moaning thrall that's like banging on the door in the closet like, yo, let me out. Like the skeletons don't even want to be in there. Like they want to be out and free and to be skeletons and go to the graveyard. But like we've pushed them into our closets and like we don't let them out.
Yep. Although taking them out can be more like a game of Jenga than, so it's not like a trivial thing to just yank the skeletons out of the closet. Like
No.
that was, yeah.
But they also, I made this interesting phenomenon. My life group at church, like our closest friends here, 4 couples, including us, made a commitment this year to try to keep the Sabbath. And we all have noticed, so we're 6 weeks in or whatever now. And in the first 4 weeks, I think all of us, the Sabbath was the hardest day of the week. And we recognized, talking about it, like we each had gotten into some form of like conflict with our spouse that was like unexpected and abnormal. And we came basically after talking together for a while and seeing the commonalities, we're like basically came to the realization of like, oh, the rest of our week is just so busy and we're so distracted. And like to your point, Ethan, like I'm on Twitter, you know, like looking at the details of what's happening in Minnesota, that like there's not enough empty space such that the thing that my wife and I talked about on Sunday that led to like a larger conversation that was like somehow kind of snowballed into something like conflict was it came up on Sunday in the Sabbath because there was no room for it anywhere else. And so like, you know, it's like to the degree to which these things, like, do you have to go in the closet or like, well, the skeletons will come knocking, you know? And it's like skeletons like is like a scary word for it. Like for me and my wife, it wasn't a skeleton. Like it was just like, even just the things that you have not attended to some degree, you don't have to always go knocking. Like they will come knocking, but if you don't provide the space, and we were like kind of sad about the Sabbath, like all of us. And then after that conversation, we're like, oh, actually, like it's maybe not serving the function that we hope it will once we've like come to slow our pace of life and we don't need to have conflict on the Sabbath. But like right now, it's actually like serving a good function of like, hey, there's things you haven't attended to, you haven't talked about them, and you need to talk about them, and you need to attend to them. And so the Sabbath is the place you've created that space. And so here we go. And that's like God's kindness to us, even if it's not what he hoped we'd be doing on the Sabbath.
Let's say like we recognize the Sabbath is not an individual day disconnected from the rest of the week. And you start to notice it starts to creep in, and you start to realize like, oh, the day before should be effectively like Sabbath preparation. Especially if you take like you look at like Old Testament, like and able to like successfully make it through the Sabbath, you need to do all of your logistical preparations the day before, so everything is ready. So even the day before is not like any other day because it is getting you ready for the day to come. And so
we're learning that.
Is the Sabbath
just
the high
ideas
place?
in my head? I ain't doing this. I work on the Sabbath, man.
Oh, Ethan, that's a good question.
Sorry.
Like when Aph talks about the tsunami, like is the Sabbath the high place? Like is the Sabbath the high place in the week where we go up the mountain and like either prepare for the rest of the week or hear from God, which allows us to then go back down the mountain Monday through Saturday to, I don't know, live and do and just and life. Do I don't know.
Have any of you guys ever done like fermentation stuff at all?
I did one experiment when I was living in the dorms at Liberty. It blew up.
Come here. So the thought that I kind of had was that what Gray's describing sounds a lot like burping a fermentation vessel. That you have pressure building up and building up and building up, and like the pressure existed before y'all started trying to practice the Sabbath. You just didn't know it was there because you were so busy that you just weren't taking the time to even test and see what the pressure in the relationship was. And so like, by practicing the Sabbath, you're burping the vessel, and the first couple of times that you're doing that, like it's way hotter than you thought it was, and boom, it almost explodes the lid off. But after you do that a couple of times, then you get a little bit better control of what the pressure inside of the vessel is, and then it starts to even out. And like you might still have instances where you do have that fraught discussion when you're able to have it, because that's another part of it is like if you're not able to have it when you can't afford the emotional cost during the week. Like you have other things that you have to pay that emotional cost to. You can't afford it during the week. When you finally have that coin available to you, that's when you get to pay that toll. That's when you get to actually deal with whatever stuff has been bubbling under the surface.
Yeah, I mean, I think that fits perfectly with what Ethan's saying about the Sabbath being the high place and just like living liturgically generally. Like, liturgy is far more than just Sunday, which obviously everybody in here knows, and anybody who listens to this will know likely. But it's just like like Matt said, the liturgy, like that's exactly Matt. The conclusion we came to was like, okay, Saturday needs to be a really good day of preparation, and that day of preparation should probably include a family meeting where we talk about shit that we need to talk about, and so then we can light our Sabbath candle on Saturday night and have a glass of wine and know that we've talked about what we need to talk about, and we can truly rest, delight, worship, and enjoy each other and our community and the Sabbath, and keep it as the high place where then also like you said, Ethan, like then I can maybe have a hope of like hearing from God in a special way on the Sabbath because I've like taken care of what needs to be taken care of. But that only happens if I live liturgically, like in a holistic sense. But I like that Sabbath as high place. I want to think about that. That's really good. Especially in light of what Aph said, like Aph's the whole hurricane warning system and all of that. And the fact that I think like if you, like we're doing John Mark Comer's practicing the way his nonprofit, like they're guiding through the Sabbath. And like one of the biggest things that they say is like, hey, there's a lot of freedom about how you go about the Sabbath, but like one of the almost non-negotiables is put your freaking phone down. Like, put the phone away. Don't get on the internet, like optimally. Don't make stupid purchases. There's a bunch of different things, but it's like the main thing is like put your phone in a box. And that's Sabbath has high place.
It's funny. I was just thinking about how I'm it's very easy for me to go to like a comedy show and put my phone in like a yonder bag where they like seal it. And like, that's like a simple act I do. Cause it's like, yeah, I want to go see the comedy show. Like it's harder for me to like leave my phone in the car when I go to church. That's like, oh, I'm treating that comedy show as more sacred than I treat church.
Mm-hmm.
But once again, you're recognizing it.
I mean, there's this sense, and I don't know if you guys feel this, but like I never grew up with any of this. I mean, I grew up in megachurch land, and so it was very far away from the ancient rhythms of liturgy or like liturgy as a way of life, which I feel like I'm just stumbling into. And I feel like there's a lot of us stumbling into liturgy as rhythms of life, which can be practiced in many different Christian denominations. And even like our Jewish friends, that's in their DNA. Like, it's like we're like, the old meme of like Jordan Peterson, John Peugeot was like, go to church, go to church, go to church. And like, yes, that's absolutely true. But I feel like we're like kind of mining that meme and being like, go to church because Sabbath is the high place. And if you can do that, the rest of your life will get in alignment. And then maybe you could try to practice forgiveness, or maybe you could try to be nice to the grocery store clerk. That's what I'm trying to do, is be nice to the grocery store clerk. Like, I feel like we're mining these memes. We're finding gold.
It will also, you're not going to be able to get to the high place if you don't practice going there, if you don't know where it is.
I mean, in a sense, like the Sunday liturgy ritual, it's just a very specific, concrete, physical thing that you do. And I don't know, attending to the things that you're doing as you're putting those into practice will then hopefully give you an eye for and an ear for how to do that, like on the spiritual plane, how to become a Sabbathy place for those around you, how to recognize the other places that are Sabbathy throughout the rest of the week.
My baby's moving around a lot, and that feels like a wonderful place for me to exit. So
I was just thinking, like, did we get to the end?
It seems fitting for us to sacrifice some time to silence at the end before our finality. We've been awesome. Wandering around Sabbath for the last hour.
Man, I love it. Everything comes back to the spiritual disciplines. That's so funny.
It's almost like they're there for a reason. It's crazy.
Oh, I know. It's hilarious. It's like God slapping me in the face, being like, "Bro, you've done this for like 6 years now. Just go do them."
I mean, me too. Yeah, I think probably. We can also
Are you sure we shouldn't talk about them for another 2 years at least? Come on, man.
Deliberation is important.
That's right. There's so many meetings we have yet to hold.
Hey, this was a great. This was an awesome conversation and very, very perfect. I think, at least for me, right before Lent. This was great. It was fun to meet you, Aph, and thanks for organizing, Ethan, and inviting me, Matt. I appreciate you guys.
Thank you, Gray.
All right, guys. Talk to you later.
See you
Peace.
Later. So there's 10 minutes on the clock. Is there anything you guys want to discuss in 10 minutes, or do you want the final question? Because I have one final question I have to end this with.
Yeah, I'd say we'll take the final question. I also want to say it's probably good that we did not go live, because we definitely would not have delivered on whatever thumbnail we made. So, because this has not gone anywhere near where any of us thought it would. Unless your final question is going to bindle sack us up again.
No.
Go ahead.
No, I mean, this was like, I don't know. So I'm going to answer the final question for Gray. Hopefully Gray approves. Like Gray was talking about, we didn't follow up on this. But Gray was talking about like beauty. And like this conversation was so much more beautiful than I expected. Like I really, like at the beginning, I was actively trying to pray and be like, oh, because I could just see this going so many directions. I could see this offending so many people, and not that we were trying to offend anyone, but like it just felt like such heavy, stormy waters. And I was like, I don't know how the four of us are going to navigate through. And I don't think that any of us did navigate. I think that there was some wind blowing us places. And the other thing I think that Gray really brought in was like the fact that Gray and his friends are practicing Sabbath as a group. I think is really cool, and that's like really inspiring to me. So yeah, that's what I'm going to put forward as Gray's answer to the question I'm about to ask both of you. So the name of this will be Matt, Gray, Aph, and the quest for the holy Techne. The question is, did we find anything holy?
What do you mean when you say holy?
Well, I mean specifically like the word holy. I'm going to pronounce it wrong, but I know that in Hebrew it's something like Kodesh. It's a really bad pronunciation, but it means something like set apart for the purposes of God. Did we? And Techne is like this old word for technology, which is it's broader than just digital. And I'm frozen, but this technology keeps rolling, so we're going to keep rolling. It's like it's craft. It's what you do with your hands. It's how you get from place to place. So like, did we find anything that was set apart for the purposes of God as we craft our lives, as we take our lives from place to place? That's what I mean when I say that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think sort of like the presenting problem, which did like animate the rest of the conversation, is what do we do with the chaos of inputs in our life? How do we handle that? How do we morally make sense of this? And it seems like the thing that this conversation found is that sometimes you just need to turn the inputs off. Like that was through Sabbath, that was through like disciplined ignorance of the things that are going on. It's through at times like withdrawal, recognizing you don't need to engage in you don't need to play every game that's presented to you. You don't need to fight every fight that's offered to you. There is an important place for taking time away, setting time aside. There's a time to retreat as well as a time to engage. And if our lives are all engagement and no retreat, then we're not making space for the holy to appear.
Not leaving a Sabbath. Yeah, I think we're still on the quest. It feels like a lot of what we're trying to do right now is actually get a sense of the shape of the tools of the Techne that are being employed against us. And I don't think we have a good enough sense of those yet in order to be able to properly employ them against their masters. Like that, I don't even know if that's necessarily the right way of framing it, but that's at least not like nosing our way around the rat trap and realizing it's a rat trap and not eating the cheese every single time. Like let's just start there. Like there's very clearly technology that has been designed to do bad things to us. Let's at least start by recognizing that that's what that is and not falling into exactly what it's designed to try and do to us. Well, like let's get away from the whirlpool and then we can worry about pursuing the quest for the holy Techne. But the whirlpool is like right here. We need to get away from the whirlpool first.